Okay, now that we refactored and cleaned up our code, we're ready to go ahead with the next two steps, which is first of all check if the current MAC is the MAC that the user requested, and then print an appropriate message. Now we're going to combine these two steps in this lecture today because they are very easy and we've actually used everything that I'm going to do now in the past, so it should be easy for you to understand. Now first of all, I'm just going to hide this block right here because we don't care how we get the current MAC, we just know that we have a function that gives us the current MAC. And right here we have the code for our main program, and we know now this current line right here is going to get me the arguments that the user enters. Then the next line right here is going to get me the current MAC using the getCurrentMac function that we wrote in the previous lecture. Then we're going to print the current MAC. And then this is the step where the MAC address is going to change. So I'm actually going to uncomment it so it gets executed. And this is all going to be done using the changeMac function that we wrote before. So this line right here, we'll call this function. It will send the options.interface and options.newMac, which is the interface and the MAC that the user enter as arguments. So far so good. So after this step, the MAC address should change to the MAC address that the user requested if everything goes smoothly. So after this line, we need to check if the current MAC is actually the same as the MAC that the user requested. Now to do this, first we need to get the current MAC again. So we're just going to do current MAC equals get current MAC, and we're going to give it options.interface. So this line is identical to this line, and both lines do the same thing, they just get the current MAC. Keep in mind I'm using the same variable name in here, which means that whatever value that was stored in the variable before will actually get changed now if the MAC address did get changed. Now that we have the value of the current MAC stored in the current MAC variable, all we have to do is use an if statement. And we're going to check if the current MAC is equal to the MAC that the user requested in the arguments, which is stored in options.newMac. If they are equal, then we're going to print MAC address was successfully changed to, and I forgot an L in here. Now in here you can either print the options.newMac or current MAC, doesn't really matter because it got changed. Otherwise, so we're going to do else print MAC address did not get changed. So one thing that I want to note here, see in here I actually used equals equals instead of a single equal. In Python, when you're comparing two values, so we're comparing the current MAC and the options.newMac, if you want to check if two values are identical or equal to each other, then you have to use equal equal instead of a single equal. Because as you've seen before, when we use a single equal, Python thinks that we want to assign a value to the variable. For example, when we wanted to capture the value of the arguments, we said options equal to get arguments. When we want to capture the current MAC, which is the value returned by the getCurrentMac function, we say current MAC equals getCurrentMac. So if you don't want to change the value of the variable and you just want to check if the value in this variable is equal to the value in this variable, then you have to use equal equal instead. Now that's it, our code is done. Let's go and test it. So I'm going to clear all of this. And I'm going to try to change the MAC address of ETH0 to something that ends up with 22. Hit enter. As you can see, first of all, it's giving me the current MAC, which is this. Then it's telling me a message. I'm changing the MAC address of ETH0 to this. And then when it succeeds, it's going to tell us MAC address was successfully changed to this value right here. Now, the program works perfectly. If it faces errors, it's going to print error messages for us. If it works well, it's going to give us a message to validate that everything worked fine. And it also looks good and it's very reusable because we splitted it into a number of functions. So we can call these functions multiple times throughout the program. One thing that I want you to revise again, note the value here for the current Mac. The first time it was printed as the actual Mac, and then when we use the same variable, but we assigned it to the function again to get current Mac. Now since the Mac got changed, the value in here was overwritten with whatever this function returns. So if you check it again, you'll see that it's printing to us the value of the Mac after it got changed. So this just shows that you can override the value in variables as you go along throughout the program. Now that's it for this program. I'm happy enough with it. We can still add more features to it, but I think that's good for now. We learned how to use functions, we learned how to use decision making, we learned about regex, we learned how to use modules, how to execute system commands, read system output, and much more throughout this very simple program. So we're done with this. Next, we'll move on to another program where we're going to learn more concepts and build more advanced stuff.